Alright, let's see if they fix the rolling physics. Apparently not. What the hell is going on? My opinion on Sonic X Shadow Generations has definitely gone through some changes after watching more and more promo material. I started off fairly lukewarm to the initial announcement, but not 2 months later I wanted to end up pre-ordering the game's Digital Deluxe Edition in order to play it as soon as possible. But now I've had the game for a few days, played through both halves, and I thought I'd make a review style video talking about my experiences, since I am pretty much an expert on Sonic. Exemplary. The first thing I want to clarify is that I'm doing 2 videos. This one, which is a more concise review with as few spoilers as possible, and another video a bit later which is going to be a deep dive into the gameplay, hub worlds, etc. Now, while I will try to keep spoilers to a minimum out of consideration for the new players, some of my points are better explained with mid to late game footage from both halves. But I will try to keep it down to a few seconds of footage either way. And with that, it's time to jump in. Don't get too excited there. We'll tackle the new stuff first, namely Shadow Generations. As soon as we start, we got customizable controls and multiple save files, thank God. I was never a fan of the original single save file system, so this is a welcome change. There's an introductory video for anyone who doesn't know Shadow's story, and it's a really thoughtful option for players who haven't played the older games. Starting off a new file, we get a cutscene of Shadow tracking something on the Ark, and then the chase begins.
Finally, I've got you now. I won't let you get away.
Our first look at Shadow's gameplay is on the Space Colony Ark. Shadow's controls here have, well, more control compared to Sonic. This comes at the cost of a slight reduction in speed, mainly when not boosting, but personally I'm okay with it. Shadow's boost is only charged through rings, unlike Sonic who can get it by taking down enemies and obstacles as well. It's a little frustrating at first, mainly because I'm used to the boost being easily refillable, but as I played more, I really started to like the concept of rationing out my boost for an optimal run. Well, that, and I just wasn't used to the controls yet. I'm not gonna reach that, for God's sake! One big change actually comes in the form of Shadow's homing attack. I talked in another video about how Shadow attacks enemies using a move that resembles the Chaos Snap instead of the regular homing attack. Initially, I thought it was just a change in animation, but it's also a change in game mechanic. The best way to explain it is to show 2 instances of its use. Space Colony Ark has a section where an enemy is behind a laser wall. Most players who are still used to the regular homing attack would assume that they missed a switch to shut off the lasers, but the actual method is to use the warp technique to bypass them. That is awesome. Not everyone thinks of this right away though, so there's another section in the later stage, Rail Canyon, where enemies are blocked off by a wall. This basically mandates learning the mechanic, and then players who can connect the dots and go back to the Ark to try it out are rewarded with a collectible. This is the type of game design I've been wanting to see from Sonic games for a while. It keeps the base moveset and instead teaches the player different applications of it. One slight side effect of having the Frontier style button mapping is that it took a little while for me to get used to not being able to homing attack from the ground. You have to jump in order to home in. It's not really an issue because most of the time the only consequence was me standing on the ground for a second wondering if my controller broke. Hey, how's it going? I adapted to it quickly, but it's just an interesting thing I wanted to point out. Shadow also has a double jump, further differentiating him from Sonic, who has the drop dash. I'm a big fan of this. One of the most annoying things about Unleashed Generations and Forces are the non-existent mid-air controls. I'm fairly certain that the stiffness is a side of the Havok physics engine, but the double jump does a lot to patch the issue. The mid-air control for Shadow is also just a lot better. There is some amount of that Havok arthritis, but I can't ever say that it caused any problems for me. Same goes for ground control actually. I noticed moving from side to side no longer feels like pushing against a brick wall, to the point where I barely use the quick step even in set pieces meant for it. This is actually really important because unlike Sonic, Shadow doesn't have a drift. Now, there aren't that many corners to turn in Shadow's levels to test this out, but it is serviceable enough for me to navigate as white space without keeping a stock of ibuprofen nearby. Shadow also doesn't have a lightspeed dash, but I mean, I think this move is used only about 5 to 6 times in Sonic's main levels, so it's not a huge change. The stomp works in the same way as it does for Sonic, except for some reason I can't use it on wooden boxes and Shadow just bounces around, which wastes time. Hurry up! The first unique power for Shadow is Chaos Control. Once the Chaos Energy gauge at the bottom is full, pressing ZL freezes time for 5 seconds. This changes the way you interact with the level since many sources of damage now become platforms or homing attack targets. It also lets you access these paths of light, which function as shortcuts or alternate paths that you need for collectibles. I really love how Chaos Control is used in this game. There are set pieces that drastically change when it's used, there are challenges specifically meant to utilize it, and the S-rank time for both the challenges and the main levels is stricter under the consideration that you'll be using it somewhat regularly. The Doom powers are a bit more of a mixed bag. Though, how do I say this? There are things that I like and don't like about the way these moves were executed. The Doom Spear is easily my favorite in terms of gameplay. It's accessible at any time and has an easy to remember input. Press X to use Chaos Spear, hold it down to upgrade to Doom Spears. Could not be simpler. Doom Blast ended up being way more situational than I thought it would be. The action command is logical enough. Hold down the Y button to launch an enemy, aim, send them packing, and then teleport to where they were launched. The issue is that it works on one specific enemy. These Black Doom creatures are occasionally present in levels and white space, and they are the only enemies that Doom Blast works against. It looks really cool when it's used, but it's kind of limited in how it's used. Doom Surf auto-activates on water, which is great because water is very abundant in white space and a few levels, and there are plenty of hoops and ramps to launch off of. You can boost in this form, which is fine for me. It's a debate of whether you want a form that's basically Shadow but meant for water platforming, or if you think that the hoops and ramps are a skill check. It really all comes down to preference on this one. I think it's pretty neat. Doom Morph is the one form that I actively do not like. It's probably the most situational power since you can only use it on corrupted terrain. However, unlike Doom Surf, you need to activate this. How? By finding a Morph Orb that transforms you. But if you so much as tap your pinky on normal terrain, you transform back and you have to find another Morph Orb to transform again. What the heck is it? Also, you move ridiculously slowly on corrupted terrain otherwise, so it takes forever to reach another orb if you do revert back. Conquer all terrain. Yeah, I have to conquer my better judgment to play this level again. Just give me full access. What, you think I can't handle it? Well, maybe. Doom Wing functions like a super form. Press L and R at the same time when you have 50 rings and Shadow transforms. I kinda predicted how this would work in my other video. You glide in the air after using an air boost, but holding the boost button down keeps you from losing height. It's pretty fun to me, but I won't get into specifics in this video, mainly due to spoilers. It's also why I won't be giving a level-by-level breakdown of the game or go too in-depth with white space in this video, but I will be talking about some of the general aspects of the gameplay. I'll set the record straight right now. Act 1 of all the stages in Shadow Generations eclipses a good chunk of the other Boost games. It's not that the other games are necessarily bad, but these levels are phenomenal. As early as the first level, the amount of open space and alternate paths is insane. Rail Canyon Act 1 is arguably more open than the Heroes version. I know that sounds like blasphemy from a Heroes fan, but the amount of different routes you can take is far above the original. It also even looks more cohesive, like I can see a part of the level and try to get to it by platforming. Every single Act 1 has this feeling of openness. Even Sunset Heights, the level from Forces, manages to be less linear. It's incredible to see just how much work they put into this. Act 2 of every stage is pure 2D. Nice! Why they insist on doing this, especially for this game, is beyond me. Oh yeah, it's because they need to pad for time. Now, I'm not gonna be that hard on these stages, mainly because they're fully separate acts, and all the Act 1 stages are pure 3D gameplay anyway. Also, some of the 2D stages do have some pretty novel gameplay, so that saves it a little bit in my opinion. White Space is also pure 3D, looks like they learned their lesson from Chaos Island. And while the reimagined stages are the highlights, White Space contains the bulk of the unlockables and collectibles. If you're going for full completion, you're spending quite a bit of time here finding items and beating challenges. One of the ways you're finding items in White Space is through locked collection boxes, and this links up to the stages which have the collection keys. Even the collection keys are really fun to try and hunt down in the stages. They tend to vary in difficulty. You have some that are on the main route, some that are just given to you, some that you need to take a detour for, some that are transparent. Damn. Yeah, the one persistently annoying issue that I've had with the game is constant frame drops. They're usually bearable, but it gets aggravating when it causes me to die! Now, to be fully transparent, there could be multiple factors to this. My PC, despite exceeding the minimum requirements, is still pretty old. I run recording software, Denuvo being the absolute malignancy of gaming, so I can't really say if someone else's PC copy will have similar issues. Hell, the console versions probably do have a stable frame rate. But if you're also running this on PC, installing the game onto an SSD, setting the graphics to low with the FPS locked at 60 should give you a constant performance. Since the story has a bunch of spoilers, I'll talk about it in the deep dive video as well. For now, I will say this. The story is about the same length as Sonic Generations, but it's more robust and has a tightly written script in comparison. That leaves one last aspect to talk about, the music and sound design. Even with a series like Sonic, which has a reputation of having very good music, music is often a very subjective topic, so you might not agree when I say that I have a mixed opinion of this game's music. On one hand, I have some new remixes and originals that I really enjoy listening to, like the Space Colony Arc theme, the first remix of Radical Highway, Kingdom Valley's remix, and the BioLizard theme remix. On the other hand, all of the Act 2 stages have this synth-style music that I just don't like, except maybe Bullet Station, which, despite the scarcity of the guitar, has a decent beat. There are some songs where I have mixed feelings about different parts of the song. The remix of What I'm Made Of sounds fine, but I feel like the drums just don't compare to the original. Another example is Chaos Island. Listen to this part. Pretty good, right? It's a nice piece with a good beat that's inspired by the second movement of the original song. Now listen to this part from the same song. Clearly this part was inspired by an MRI machine. What the heck is this? I don't know, I'm really just not a fan of synth. I much prefer the sound of actual instruments, but hey, if you like these remixes, that's great. It's up to you, and I can't take that away, nor do I want to. One thing to add about the sound mixing is that the default settings feel very off. Like, the bass volume of the sound effects seems to be higher, which leads to certain sounds just attacking my ears. Breaking boxes was basically a jump scare when I started playing. Jesus Christ, yeah, I'm turning that way down. This isn't just an issue with Shadow Generations either, it's also present in Sonic's half of the game. God damn. Maybe the original did do a better job at sound mixing. Why? Oh right, there's an entire remaster of Sonic Generations that came along with this game. So anyway... Okay, so I'm saving Sonic Generations Remastered for a part 2 because I want to give the game the time it deserves, since I can also make it from the point of view of a newer player. There are plenty of aspects and changes to go over in the game, so I thought I'd devote an entire part 2 to it. Once again, I want to thank Sinister Pixel, LPs, and a bunch of my anonymous friends for quality checking and critiquing these videos so that every single video is an improvement on the last.